Hello, I'm Sergeant Motter with the Michigan State Police School Bus Inspection Unit.
Good afternoon, Troy Hansbarger, Manager of School Consolidation, Facilities and Transportation Unit, Office of Health and Safety, Michigan Department of Education. So Sergeant, if you would be so kind, can you explain to our supervisors the process that you and your team typically go through in the school bus inspection?
Yep. So each one of the inspectors are the ones that are responsible for setting up their schedule. They will reach out to whoever's on file in our system, either the contact number or the contact person, either by email or phone call, and they will try and schedule and let you know. Generally, it's at least 2 weeks out. They try and give you that some time to work things out. But law states we can just show up without even contacting you as well. We try and keep it about the same every year just for continuity and just so everybody knows that people aren't freaking out that it's going beyond like a 12-month period. We really try and keep it around there. But when our cycles start, that it starts on September 1st and it goes through August 31st. So each inspector will, like I said, will reach out, contact you, and try and set something up, whether it's on your location or if they need to. My guys are always willing to try and meet you where you need to, if you need to be met somewhere in the middle, or if you need a bus done in a certain amount of time, they'll try and work with you where they're at, so it doesn't mess up their schedule too much.
Um, Jeremy, do you mind speaking to what are some more prevalent findings that your inspectors are relaying to you about maybe some major issues that they're seeing when they're doing their inspections? Is there something maybe that's more noticed than other things?
Really, it's not more noticed. It's more of things that come with the territory. Whereas it gets things a lot like wheels, tires, brakes that are just wear and tear that go on. They might, and more times than not, if it's not quite to the point or if it's close, to let you know so you can fix it before it even becomes a problem. So generally, the main problems are along the lines of wheels, tires, brakes that are being used constantly, and especially with some of the rough roads out there that can get beat up
on. So your team will typically go in, they'll check the vehicles. Assuming the, you guys check what the rating is. Do we assume that everybody here knows about the card? For example, like green, red. I mean, I'm not sure if everybody in our audience knows. I don't know if you want to explain just in case.
Yep. So after the inspection, based on the violation, and we have our inspection manual. If anybody wants to look at it, it's up on our website, mischoolbus.gov. It's going to pull you up to a login screen. All supervisors should have access to it. If you don't, just apply through there. I'll get an email and I can approve you through there. Try and use your school email so that way I can actually have a valid way of seeing who you are, not some just your personal Yahoo or Gmail account. So I know that somebody's not just trying to get information from the system. But yep, so all supervisors should have access through there. But for the main page, they have 3 links. One to our school bus inspection manual, which will lay out each violation, what kind of tag it is, whether it's red or yellow. And then there's also another link to Public Act 187, which is the state law for the school buses. The big thing, though, for the tags, yellow means you have 60 days to fix that. So it can still be driven, still be used for pupil transportation. You just need to get that issue fixed within 60 days. The red tag is the big one where you cannot use it until that thing is fixed and re-inspected. So even if you got it fixed, my inspector's gone for the day, you have to reach out to him to come back to fix it, and then you'll get the reinspection and he'll put the green tag in. So you cannot drive it, even if you fixed it, until the inspector puts that green sticker into the window.
Okay, fair enough. Now, when you are on district grounds and you are inspecting vehicles, do you sometimes go into the school to check driver records as well? Either the school, garage, wherever files are kept. Do you meet with any district personnel to go over driver files?
Yep. So our inspectors should be going in, talking to whoever's in charge of the filing. Go wherever that is. If you have multiple locations, they'll show up, and based on the amount of drivers you have, are the amount of files that we'll look at. There's a sample size based on the amount of drivers that you have. So we'll be looking at if they have a valid CDL, if that CDL has the proper endorsements on it with the P&S, your medical card, making sure that all your continuing ed or new bus driver card, that they have that, and then the supervisor has their supervisor card.
Okay. So it sounds to me, Jeremy, that the audits that we do at the Department of Education, in a lot of sense, kind of mimic what you guys are looking for when we do our audits. And it's refreshing to hear. So we're almost doing a double check is what we're doing. But unfortunately, due to low staffing, we can only do a sampling as well, right? You can only do so much. We at the department do a 10% sampling process as well. So like Sergeant Motter just discussed, when I am auditing school districts, I look for expiration dates on a lot of different items, CDL, P&S endorsement. I also look for expiration date on medical cards. And also, if you are, a beginning school bus driver, for example, your white or yellow card expirations. If you are an experienced bus driver, we are looking for expirations on green cards. And then when we go over to the supervisors, for example, we're making sure that, the continuing education has those, making sure that the salmon cards are not expired. So like you say, looking at a lot of those driver credentials to make sure that they are staying in proper order. What I will say from the Department of Education standpoint is you can expect to see in the coming years, starting as early as next school year, there's going to be some changes in looking for, for making sure that certain people are eligible to be taking the classes that they're taking, to making sure that cards are being distributed to the right individuals, to eligible individuals, because we're finding that in certain cases, a lot of those processes need to be definitely revamped. All right, Jeremy, I think I'll probably lead off by just getting into a little bit of the audit process that we do at MDE before I maybe turn things over to you, if that's all right. So our number one goal at the department is safety, among everything else. It starts with student safety, but it doesn't end with student safety, right? Bus drivers are extremely important to protect their safety as well, so we have to make sure that there are things, processes in place that keeps everyone safe. Making sure that bus drivers and supervisors are properly credentialed is really the backbone or staple of that operation. If we send our kids, our Michigan students, with drivers who are not properly credentialed, automatically their safety becomes at risk. So I mentioned some of the things that we look for in our audits in terms of expiration dates on medical cards and driver cards, supervisor cards, and things like that. We also make sure that we look for criminal history background checks on all of our drivers, so the districts have to provide those on an annual basis. We also require something we call an unprofessional conduct report. that we, in a lot of districts, we find this a problem. A lot of our districts don't have these in place. There needs to be a system in place where someone is hired into a district to become a driver, for example. It is the requirement of that onboarding school district to send an unprofessional conduct report to their previous employer to make sure that there are no problems that they had on their records. If we have a case where they don't have that on file, we don't just let that go. It's a situation where it's flagged. The school district has to then come up with a policy. They have to give us a policy statement that is written up by their Board of Education, basically testifying that they will now undergo these processes to make sure that they're sending out these reports. Typically what we find is school districts do have a system in place, but a lot of times these files fall through the cracks is what ends up happening. People get complacent. They have these files that they hang on to, and they say, "Oh, Troy, I didn't know how long I was supposed to hang on to these." So obviously pointing them to the retention records policies that we have at the department. We also make sure that drivers don't have more than 7 points on their license. They have to check this through the Michigan Department of State. There have been in recent weeks where districts have reached out to me on how they can inquire points, their points on their drivers. I have a link that I send them through John Harris at MDOS, where basically they can get on the registry, for example, and they're able to check their points, because once they hit 7 points on their license, they're not able to drive a school bus in the state of Michigan. So just to get into a little bit of our audit process, so basically when we do our audits, it's on the training agencies themselves. Then it begins to kind of branch off into more specific areas. So when we do our training agency audits, a lot of that has to do with their expenditure reports, their cost reports that they turn in. I have to look at different things such as salaries and things like that, benefits and cost to make sure, like FTEs, for example, they would have to provide sign-in sheets for their classes, for example, to prove that the people that they are claiming are showing up to these classes are in fact showing up and they are in fact taking place. So we get into the training agencies first, then we go out into their districts. So I will ask the training agencies to send me a list of all of their districts that they serve. And when I receive that list, I take a roughly 10 to 15% sample of all the school districts that provided training for those particular schools. After I've selected those, the 10 to 15% of the schools, I will then contact the schools, and then I will ask them to provide me a list of their school bus drivers and substitute school bus drivers. I will then again take a 10 to 15% sample on the school bus drivers that are provided to me, and that's how we get to the school bus driver compliance and supervisor compliance forms that they have to complete the audit. So what's interesting and sometimes challenging is we have Sergeant Motter and his school inspection team. Although it's nice that we're doing a double check in certain cases, like I mentioned, it proves to have some challenges as well, because as much as I'd like to see one, we don't have a system, for example, an actual system to where we can input data, for example, to where we can cross reference what each other is finding at the districts. And then there are also other agencies that are involved as well. So we have Michigan State Police, who is doing the school bus inspections. We are doing the authorizing side, where we're looking at bus driver credentialing. But then you also have Michigan Department of State, who's involved as well when they're looking at CDLs, points on licenses, endorsements, things of that nature. And it makes it challenging because, just like I mentioned with Michigan State Police, I don't have any type of seamless way to be able to talk to the Department of State, to be able to look at their data back and forth. I'm hopeful that that will be something that could be coming in the future. I can tell you that conversations have taken place. But before I turn it over to Sergeant Mata here, I just want to talk about a couple things. One of them is district responsibility. And district responsibility is something people need to understand, that it is the school district's responsibility for all of their pupil transportation services. Once their school board elects to provide pupil transportation, that is basically saying that by law, the school district is responsible for all of the students that they provide transportation for, all services related to that transportation. For example, we have many school districts here in the state of Michigan that, instead of running their own transportation departments, they decide that they want to use other forms, contract with other companies, for example. I know that Kent ISD, for example, is a big one, that they contract with Dean Transportation to provide transportation to their students. Kent ISD and all of their constituent districts are under the understanding that even though they sign a contract with Dean Transportation to provide the services needed, it is ultimately the school district's responsibility for those students. They are enrolled at that school. So I just want to make it clear while I'm on camera that there is to be no, if you contract your services, there is to be no, if I call you in an audit situation, do not tell me, oh, that's Dean Transportation that handles that. We don't do that. You need to do that. It is your responsibility. So if you are a district who contracts out, that is great. I mean, that's your choice how you want to do that, but just understand that it is still your responsibility, as though it would be your own transportation going on within your school district. So please understand that. Be very careful if you decide that you are a school district and you want to do alternative transportation, such as taxi cabs and TNCs. These are transportation network companies. I just want to say that you have to proceed with caution. If you choose to use these types of services, I know many districts do decide to go this route, but just be careful, because a couple different reasons. Anytime that we have a transportation network company or a taxi cab, they are under the drivers of those vehicles are under a different set of requirements than we have for our school bus drivers here in the state of Michigan. For example, all of the courses that we require our school bus drivers to go through, all of our MDE approved courses, those TNC drivers do not have to go through. They do not have to have a CDL license like our school bus drivers do. And the school bus inspection team does not do inspections on those vehicles. And even though it's the district's responsibility to perform criminal background checks on these drivers, you don't know if that's happening 100% of the time. So I just want to say on record that proceed with caution. Be careful if you elect to do these alternative methods of transportation. As a district, again, it is your responsibility to do your due diligence to make sure that you need to make sure that you are checking on these drivers as much as you possibly can for student safety, because again, it will fall on you. In a court of law, it will fall on you. So just keep that in mind. If you are a school district who decides to do public transit, again, similar to TNCs and taxi cabs and alternative transportation, districts need to be careful with these as well. Public transit does offer some of our school districts another option to get to and from school. But again, the drivers of public transit vehicles, similar to the other alternative methods, it's the same. They don't have to get school bus driver curriculum trained. They don't have to go through many of the other school district employee trainings, such as seclusion restraint, things along that nature. Um, Background checks could be a little wishy-washy. So you just want to be careful if you're not using a school bus, which is what I always encourage districts to use. I know Sergeant Motter would probably agree with me there. I mean, school buses is by far, that's 11 passengers or more. That's the way to go. But we do understand that there are needs specific to certain school districts here in the state of Michigan that do have to veer off and elect to get their kids in some different types of vehicles. Just be careful when you do so. Make sure that, again, that you're doing your due diligence because it is important. Like I said, student safety is my number one concern. It's Michigan State Police's number one priority. So please make sure that you are making sure that you are doing everything you can when you're putting your students into those vehicles, that you're checking to make sure that it is a safe environment for those students. So Jeremy, I've probably talked enough. I guess I'll turn it over to you if you want to maybe touch on the Drug and Alcohol Clearinghouse.
Yep. So going back to what you were saying, the drivers are probably the most important part of this, making sure they have the proper qualifications, things like that. I'll get to the Drug and Alcohol Clearinghouse in a second, but just kind of doing a further deep dive beyond your audit and beyond our inspection from our inspectors looking at the driver files. You could be getting a call and basically another audit from the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration or FMCSA. They do a little bit deeper dive into your personnel files and everything that's required than what we do. So instead of just making sure you have a valid driving license and medical card, they're going to make sure you have that with the endorsements. They're going to make sure your medical card's correct. They even have the ability to go in and contact the person who did the DOT physical to make sure, one, that they're on the list, and two, that they actually performed it, so to try and circumvent any kind of false medical cards. They're also going to go into another thing where you need to have an MVR, motor vehicle record, from the Secretary of State. And you don't just pull that when you hire somebody. You have to do that every year, and there has to be an annual review summary from the supervisor with the driver. So it's not just pulling the MVR, and you can't play negligence there. You have to follow up on it every year. Also, they're going to be looking into Drug and Alcohol Clearinghouse, making sure you're signed up with that. You have to have pre-employment, and you also have to do that yearly. So that way we can see if there has been any kind of positive hits, and making sure that you're doing your due diligence as the employer of that CDL holder, making sure that they are valid and safe to drive.
Yeah, that Drug and Alcohol Clearinghouse, Jeremy, one thing I want to touch on that, not only is it the district's responsibility to make sure that they are registered for that, we still have people out there in the field that are still not registered, like you mentioned. We need to make sure that they're all registered. But one major thing that we've been finding with the Drug and Alcohol Clearinghouse, and I don't know if you've heard about it, is a lot of masking. I don't know if you've heard anything about that, but we are having some issues here in the state of Michigan where, because districts are so hard up to find bus drivers, in a lot of cases they tend to be masking the results sometimes. So I don't know if you've heard anything about that. That was just something that came from Secretary of State, Department of State was talking about it. So I just wanted to throw that out there as well. All right, so Jeremy, there's a few pressing topics that I want to discuss with you. A lot of major things that are happening at the districts, a lot of questions that I seem to be fielding at the department. One big one is pre-trip inspections. What can you tell our supervisors here about the need for pre-trip inspections, the importance, when, how often, Can you speak a little bit about that?
Yeah. So pre-trip inspections are, I want to say, vital to preventative maintenance because your drivers are going to be the ones that are in that bus every day. If your mechanic doesn't know what's going on with that bus, how are they going to fix it? So the driver should be doing that pre-trip, probably should be doing a post-trip too, um, just to make sure that everything is good. Because, like I said earlier, with tires, brakes, general wear and tear, I mean, that just comes as a price of doing business. And if you don't do your walk around, you're not going to notice something starting to look a little bad or starting to break. You don't know unless you're doing that walk around. And then you can say, have it on documentation. That way, the driver can hand it to the mechanic, and then that way there's a paper trail and you know that that stuff is getting looked at and that stuff is getting done. So it's a vital part of a preventive maintenance program.
That Sergeant Motter and his team come through and wants to take a look at any documentation pertaining to vehicle maintenance records, they have the ability to do so. So make sure that all documentation is kept on file.
And then going off that, I mean, if anything, liability wise, that'll cover you saying that you're doing everything you possibly can to make sure. So if there's a big accident or something, God forbid, that way you know that it wasn't because of something that should have been fixed a long time ago. It was either an action of somebody driving or something bad, that just a freak accident, but you know that mechanically that that bus has been looked at and you know that it's been worked on.
Yeah, that's a great point because we've been talking a lot about district responsibility, right? So, God forbid, you said it, if there's a crash, we have some injuries or something like that, or worse, what's going to be asked, right, by lawyers is have you performed any pre-trip inspections? Have you monitored the vehicle? If you don't have any of those documents on file, good luck in a court of law. So please make sure that you keep all documentation, make sure that you are doing those as regular as possible. The next thing I want to talk about, another big kind of big topic, Jeremy, is 10-passenger vehicles. I know we've talked a little bit about it already as part of alternate transportation, but we're starting to see more and more of these, we call them school transportation vehicles. There's these vans that are out there that districts will own, that will purchase for various reasons, and they're 10 passengers or less. Can you talk a little bit about 10-passenger vehicles, what PA 187 kind of distinguishes them against school buses?
Yep. So when it comes to 187, and I know we've harped on it throughout this whole video, Public Act 187 says 11 passengers or more, including the driver. So really, it's the driver and 10 plus passengers.
Yep.
And the big thing that I didn't hear mentioned is it's the rated capacity of that vehicle, not the amount of seats, not the amount of people in the vehicle. There should be a tag, whether it's the VIN tag or right by it, it will say the rated capacity. So if you have a 15 passenger van going down the road, and you take 5 seats out, but it's still rated for 15, we're going by that 15, and you still cannot be using that for pupil transportation. That's the biggest thing there. We cannot be using any of those vehicles to transport students, whether it's for soccer, sports, field trips. I mean, that any school or school related events they cannot be used for.
Okay, once you hit that, the 11 passengers or more, obviously we then go up to a school bus. Trying to think, with the 10 passengers or fewer vehicles, keep in mind, I think we've talked about in the alternate transportation that just be careful when districts decide to use these. We know that they're a lot less safe than school buses. They don't meet the same requirements, the federal standards that apply to school buses. Not only that, but the certificates of the drivers are completely different. So yeah, Again, we see that they do happen from time to time, but anytime you ask either one of us, school bus, 100% of the time. Um, with the school transportation vehicles, if your school district does own one of these type of vehicles, they are not to be reported in the school bus inventory system. For some reason, we still have multiple school districts trying to put them in. They may have gotten through the cracks in the past. We have updated our system to where it will no longer allow it. It will kick it out based on the VIN number that you put in. Um, so only school buses are entered into the school bus inventory system. It is the process currently at MDE that if you have a 10 passenger or less vehicle, you need to have a district waiver request signed and approved by the Department of Education. I am the one who deals with regular ed transportation, special education group, OSC. They will deal with the special education transportation. So understand it's our way of keeping inventory of these type of vehicles. I wish we could, do more to enforce them than what we are. I wish there was a way for the school bus inspection team to be able to look at them, but unfortunately at this time they're unable to do so. So it's just kind of district responsibility to make sure that that they're doing that accurately. So make sure that a waiver is signed. If you do not have a waiver on that vehicle, not only is your liability tested at that point, but then also you are ineligible to, you cannot report any costs related to that vehicle if you don't have a waiver on file. So if you get if you get over to the SC 4094, you are not allowed to report those costs on that expenditure report if you don't have those vehicles on file.
One more thing on
Yes.
the 10 passenger vans that I just thought of. One more workaround that people are trying to use for 15 passenger vans. It doesn't matter who technically owns it, whether it's a parent, school, whoever it is. If that vehicle is being used to transport for a field trip or sporting event, then you're still considered a school bus under 187 and it still cannot be used, even if it is owned by a parent. But you're transporting that team for a sporting event or whatever, it's still considered a school related event and you cannot be using that.
Yeah. Jeremy did mention the manufacturer rating seating capacity. We have had districts out there try to slip the system by saying, oh, I thought it was the number of people in the vehicle, or like he alluded to, the number of seats. Understand that manufacturer rated seating capacity is extremely important. Typically, you'll find that, that sticker right inside the door jamb. A lot of times, you will see it a lot of. If you look in your glove compartment, is on vehicle registration, for example. So just make sure that, yeah, that you're using the right type of vehicle. All right. I guess the last thing I want to touch on, Jeremy, before we get to our Q and A's here, is let's just talk about the partnership that Michigan State Police and Michigan Department of Education have. Although we've been both helping our school districts in the state of Michigan for some time, would it be an accurate statement to say that just recently, our two organizations have developed a more strong partnership in making sure that our districts are in compliance?
Yeah. So we've been obviously, as you know, we've been in talks with each other about how can we improve this? How can we get more information about uh issues, especially with driver files. That's the biggest one where we can share files so you know what we've looked at. We know what you've looked at, and then we can start taking some sort of corrective action to make sure that all these drivers have the correct credentials and they know what they're doing. Because ultimately, it's going to be coming down, as we always say, to the safety of the kids. And if they're not credentialed correctly, it's not safe to be driving the students around in these vehicles. So we are working on um, a shared drive that we can just send that document over. You can look at it and you can take whatever funding action that you need to do. And if it's completely egregious, we may have to go in and we may either ourselves or we may even have to make contact FMCSA to come in and look at it to do a further audit. So that way there is some sort of enforcement, because ultimately, like I said, it's not about the enforcement, or we don't want to crack down on places. We just want safe students, and we want these drivers to be credentialed, licensed, and everything's correct to make sure that our students get to school and home safe on time.
Sure, sure. And it's difficult sometimes when you have multiple agencies that don't have a shared system. It can be a challenge to be able to communicate about, shared files that what one organization is finding in an audit for the other one to be able to see. So the recent partnership that we've had, I feel like it's, hopefully we can down the road maybe develop some type of shared system or something. That would be nice. But in the meantime, us being able to at least share that information back and forth gets us on the same page, so that we can get a united front of student safety. Yep. Well, Jeremy, I think we've done a pretty good job at summarizing everything we feel like we need to discuss at this time. But there are probably some questions out there in the field that maybe we should take a look at to see if we can get answered. So, yeah, we'll take any questions. All right, so the question was, if MDE is performing an audit, and I guess it could be Michigan State Police too if they're looking at the driver files, what happens in the event that a school district cannot provide documentation? I guess I'll speak first, Jeremy, and then I'll kind of turn it over to you so that you can add. So, for example, I will use the unprofessional conduct report that is mandated by school district employees to send out to previous employers to make sure there are no documented previous issues. Many times during my audits, districts will say, I do not have that information, HR deals with that. And there's kind of this awkward silence, like they're waiting for me to excuse them. There is no excuse. What happens is they do need to provide Michigan Department of Education with every file I ask for. This, again, guys, this is for safety. Sergeant Mater here, obviously we're talking about compliance, but compliance for a reason, because it's centered around student safety. If you can't provide us documentation that you are looking out for the best interests of your students, then obviously then consequences could incur from that. So if you have your HR or some other person within your district that is housing files that you cannot provide, it is your responsibility to find that person or those people to get the documentation that Michigan Department of Education needs. Sergeant?
Yep. So for us, when we go in, my guys will contact the wherever district or wherever they're at and let them know, hey, we're going to be looking at driver files this day. Please have all your information there. If it's not, it's simply marked as you don't have it. It's that simple. We will give you a heads up, like I said, and if you don't have it at the location where we said we're going to meet, we're not going to sit around and wait there all day for you trying to dig through paperwork. We'll let you know, this is what we need. And if you don't have it, you don't have it. And I know it's going further into what FMCSA will do if you are getting audited by them. They will do the same thing. They will ask you if you have multiple locations. If they are, we need it at this location. They will do that. They'll generally give you 72 hours. If you do not have it at that point, they're going to handle it the same way. If you don't have it, you don't have it, and it's a violation.
Yeah, another example I'll give is the looking for points on drivers on their driving record. So, like I mentioned earlier, that is not Michigan Department of Education. Even though we audit that, that information is found through Michigan Department of State. So, if there's some type of confusion, they don't know how to do that. In many cases, they'll say, Troy, I don't know how many points they have. Since it's Michigan Department of State, my job is to provide resources. So I will provide you with a link so that those members can register so that they can get on and see points. But I'm not calling Secretary of State to find out that information for you. Understand that is the district responsibility in maintaining compliance. So the next question was, let's say you have a district who just refuses, either refuses to be compliant, or time and time again they are found to be negligent in certain areas. The question was, is what happens? I mean, is there any type of consequences that can happen because of that? I'll speak from the Department of Education side. I'll turn it over to you for police. But in terms of education, it can start from a very minor situation where I'll just contact them over and over. I will then go up the ladder to different district personnel. Um, in most cases, once it hits the superintendent level, transportation departments tend to get compliant pretty quick. But if that doesn't work, if it's a major issue, for example, a driver's card is expired, they're off the road. They're done immediately until that is rectified. So they're going to have to get themselves in a class, and they're going to have to do the training just like everybody else in order to get on the road. There is no waiting for compliance. There's no period. It's almost like getting a red tag on a vehicle. There is no wait time for that. It's immediate shutdown. And that's the way it works. Now, if it persists even past that, I'm sure most of you have heard of the 22L transportation reimbursement. That's a beautiful thing. Not only does it help out districts to offset some of their transportation costs, but unfortunately it can also be used as kind of one of those things that can be taken away or removed for districts who are refusing to be compliant.
As far as our end, when my guys go in and they look at the driver files, and if they see something wrong with continuing ed or new bus driver, I'm gonna forward that on to you.
Yeah.
We can't do anything with that. But if it has to do with CDL or a medical card, we will be working with the officers in the area, and we will be stopping you, and we will be talking with you, and you will be receiving a ticket for either an unendorsed driver or incorrect license. Because at that point, it's safety of the kids stake at that. And with the feds, I'm not exactly sure if they can find with just the paperwork that they're finding, especially if they're an intrastate school bus, that's going to be a question for FMCSA. But they could possibly find you there too.
Any other questions? So the question was, in the files or the cards rather that we are looking for, will an electronic version be acceptable, or does it actually have to be an actual physical card?
So that would depend on what we're actually looking at. For like an actual audit, especially from FMCSA, if they are looking at the driver file, it needs to be a physical file. Now, if we are talking about, hey, I just need to make sure he's got a valid license, and you pull it up and you got it on your phone, if you got the files on your phone, we'll take that. That is acceptable. But as the actual driver files, like I said, it needs to be a physical copy of it.
Yeah, and to speak of that, in our recent OAG audit, one of the some of the biggest issues were school bus drivers that did not have a card actually present with them at the vehicle, and it is required. So I just wanted to point that out. So the question was a very good question at that. It was about doing school bus inspections on electric vehicles. Are there any differences between the two? Anything different?
Yes. So obviously they've got the big batteries with the big orange cords going underneath. Do not touch. So there's less that the inspectors will be able to touch, especially underneath or with the batteries. Um, but another thing is there may be a few things, and it would depend on the model and who makes it. But we may have to do certain things like parking test brake, uh, things like that we may have to change up that we normally test with a diesel, and the test procedure will probably be different for the electric.
So the next question's an interesting one, Jeremy. It's about marijuana use, because obviously it's been legalized. If if a driver has, what was it, on their record?
A drug test.
Oh, they tested positive for marijuana. What happens?
They're placed out of service. Yeah. So the federal standards are completely different, especially with the CDL. If there is any positive of cannabis or anything like that, it will be out of service. They will not be able to drive, and they'll have to go through the SAP program to try and get their CDL back.
So the next question is along those same lines as a failed drug test, for example. How do you know? How is that data shared? How does that information come across to you so that you're aware?
So obviously, when you send somebody for a drug test, they should be giving you the results back. But if they don't, that is the importance of signing up with the Drug and Alcohol Clearinghouse, where you either do a pre-employment, which would show anything on there, and then that's why you have to do it every year as well, where you pull a report, so that way you know if there have been any positive hits on it.
Next question was decommissioning a vehicle. How can they get rid of that vehicle before the inspection to where it's not red tagged?
So if you're going to do that, probably the easiest process, if you know who your inspector is, shoot them an email. And then especially if we come on site and we do our inspections, say, hey, I'm not using this bus anymore. And the big thing is you're not going to be using that bus anymore. Like it's not like, uh, we're just waiting on parts or anything like that, because then we'll do a not presented, which that red tag can be deleted. Not presented red tags can be deleted. Um, we actually created a new orange tag just for this. It's an inactive bus tag. So that way we'll stick it in on the windshield. It's an orange one. It doesn't count against you. We'll remove it from as an active bus in the system. And then that way it's not on the active QR anymore.
Next question, Jeremy, is about the orange tagged vehicles. Are they allowed to transport students, or are they not allowed to transport students?
At that point, no. We take it out of the system. It needs to get re-inspected again before you can use it. And it says right on the orange tag, this bus shall not be used for pupil transportation.